A heavy night's sleep binds the body, plunging it into a dark abyss of disturbing memories. Yi Chenshui's eyes widened in horror, choking on the sticky fear and delusion. Flashes from the past strike on the nerves. In the underground dungeons, a cruel trial is being carried out on a prisoner. Little Ye Chenshui's whole body trembled, unable to take her eyes off the terrifying sight. A ruthless ruler pushes a frightened girl into a difficult test, forcing her to make a choice. The cold blade touches the skin, causing the heart to beat in a crazy rhythm. One wrong swing, and blood splashes onto the stone walls, painting the dungeon crimson. Tears of despair roll down Ye Chenshui's cheeks as reality blends with nightmare. The bloody blade hangs in the air like a symbol of irredeemable guilt. Ye Chenshui's eyes were frozen in a silent scream and the endless pain of loss. Memory snatches from the darkness the image of that very emperor whose name inspired awe. A muffled gasp escapes his lips, bringing back the horror of days long past. The ruler's face is hidden behind a veil of mystery and ruthless grandeur. Every moment of the past echoes with a dull pain in the wounded soul. Ye Chenshu lets out a desperate cry, releasing demonic rage and pent-up pain. A sharp jerk brings her back to reality. The girl sits up abruptly in bed, breathing heavily. Fingers crumple the sheet convulsively, trying to ground themselves in the silence of the empty room. Meanwhile, a majestic skyscraper rises above the city, hiding secret conspiracies behind its walls. In a spacious conference room, influential figures gather around a long table, ready for serious discussion. Tangji takes his place at the head of the meeting, intently considering his next steps. The tension at the table increases when the daughter of Yang Tianxi, the Taoist of the Kingdom of Longevity, Yang Tianyu, takes the floor. She declares with lazy confidence that passive waiting will not bear any fruit. Yaoshi Shanzong, known among his people as the Holy Master Yaoshi, joins the conversation. Then attention is drawn to a mysterious, blindfolded figure, radiating an unperturbed calm. The Taiyi sword sect's representative, Li Sanren, carefully assesses the situation. One of Yaoshi Xianzhong's comrades remains silent, lost in his own thoughts. Tangji watches the proceedings with a mixture of weariness and cold calculation. Suddenly, the name of the representative of the ancient Baiyun temple, Aunt Baiyun, is heard. Yang Tianyu continues to push his line, confidently holding the attention of those gathered. But the unexpected mention of a certain tear causes a wave of bewilderment among those around. Tang Ji frowned in disbelief, trying to make sense of such strange details. The overall atmosphere becomes increasingly surreal, causing everyone to question what is happening. Toya Baiyun maintains an impenetrable appearance, hiding her true intentions behind a veil. Tangji feels a little confused, but tries not to show it. The rest of the meeting participants look at each other, clearly stunned by the turn of the conversation. Tangji's eyes widen in complete bewilderment at the nonsense he heard. Li Sanren just smiled mysteriously, as if he knew much more than the others. Meanwhile, Tangji nervously bites his finger, trying frantically to figure out how to turn the situation to his advantage. The petrified expression of shock on the face of one of those present perfectly captures the overall absurdity of the moment. Meanwhile, Ye Chenshu looked around warily, feeling that the conspiracy around her was only gaining momentum. Ye Chenshui stands frozen in the sunlit courtyard, trying to comprehend the madness that is unfolding. The stranger in the pink hoodie prostrated himself on the ground right in front of her in a deep bow, demonstrating complete submission. She touches the plant leaf with a puzzled look, still not believing in the reality of the absurdity that is happening. Ye Chenshui looked down at the humiliated guest, wondering how to react to such an eccentric gesture. Her scarlet eyes reflect a mixture of confusion and quiet horror at the impending problems. She slowly wanders among the flower shelves, hoping to hide from prying eyes. Squatting down next to a pot of herbs, the girl tries to regain her composure. But even among the green foliage, she is haunted by an obsessive feeling of someone else's presence. One of the workers is already reporting to management about the discovery of the treasured find. There is something much more important hidden in a simple flower pot than meets the eye. Meanwhile, completely different, no less dynamic events are unfolding in the spacious mansion. The young man is deep in meditation, enveloped in a radiant aura of spiritual energy. His miniature, furry companion watches this mysterious process with curiosity from the sidelines. The girl mentor excitedly catches every movement of her teacher, holding her breath. He maintains an unperturbed expression, considering the next steps in this complex game. His fingers confidently grip the invisible threads of fate, anticipating the imminent turn of events. The action soon moves to the walls of an elite educational institution where serious passions are running high. Chu Qing makes a cool move in a tense game of Go, leaving his opponent no room for error. Ye Chen watches the board closely, realizing that the situation is taking a serious turn. A whimsical plan for a counterattack, full of hidden sarcasm, is already being born in her head. But instead of despondency, a predatory shadow appears on her face as she assesses the scale of the trap set by the conspiracy. Inside her, everything is boiling with anger, ready to spill out like hot lava. Ye Chen is literally ready to incinerate her offenders with just her anger, but she pulls herself together in time. Meanwhile, in the school corridor, completely different scenes are unfolding, full of quiet tension. Ye Chen shows off her smartphone screen, where an announcement of a large-scale all-Russian beauty contest is blaring, but the reaction of those around her turns out to be completely different from what she expected, plunging her into a slight stupor. She realizes with annoyance that her grandiose plans are perceived only as a reason for jokes. The corners of her lips lift up in a sly smile that foretells big trouble for someone. Tang Ji watches from his cyberspace, arms crossed, coldly analyzing the situation. A noisy crowd of classmates instantly gathers around Ye Chen bombarding her with questions. Her friends immediately begin to shower her with enthusiastic compliments, causing her to blush deeply. Some are already pointing their fingers at the lists of participants, openly declaring universal recognition. But Ye Chen tries to fight off the annoying attention, feeling extremely uncomfortable under the gaze. Her friends just giggle slyly, teasing her about her embarrassment and fueling the already tense atmosphere. And in response to Tang Jiye's jokes, Chen Shui is ready to explode from resentment and indignation. One of her friends whispers something so piquant in her ear that Ye Chen Shui's eyes literally pop out of her head. The class descends into chaos as everyone tries to outshout their neighbor, accompanied by loud laughter. At the other end of the room, paired silhouettes of students stood frozen in a lively discussion of the latest news. One of them resolutely declares his ambitions, intending to take the main prize and prove his strength to everyone. The coveted ranking lines flash on the phone screen, where a serious battle for leadership is raging. The indignant student cannot contain his emotions, pointing at the suddenly appeared rival. Shen Ledian's gaze was full of cold confidence and hidden threat. A crowd of delighted girls immediately surrounds him, showering him with admiring glances and ready-made gifts. He just smiles softly, as if he is used to being the center of everyone's attention. Noticing Tang Ji in the distance, the guy decides to make his move. Tang Ji maintains an icy calm, crossing his arms and showing no interest. But for a moment, a predatory grin flickers at the corners of his lips. Tang Ji only gives him a short, skeptical glance. The guy closes the distance, moving on to more daring actions. Tang Ji tenses up but remains on the defensive. Latine feels that he has gone too far and for a moment loses his previous confidence. He wisely decides to retreat before the situation escalates. Tang Ji watches him leave the corridor with a disappointed and irritated look. They move to the dining room, where the tension between them reaches its breaking point. Tang Ji can barely contain her rage, ready to break out at any second. But Ye Chen looks surprisingly unperturbed as she continues eating. But soon, Ye Chen becomes immersed in heavy, disturbing thoughts. Meanwhile, the same mysterious silhouette appears again in the dining room. Ye Chen suddenly blushed deeply in embarrassment, caught red-handed. An enraged Tang Ji suddenly jumps up from the table, demanding an immediate explanation. Tang Ji's heart was pounding wildly in his chest from the rising panic. There is only one silent question swirling in her head: how is this even possible? Unable to bear the tension, she jumps up and runs away, trying to escape the overwhelming feelings. Every step echoes with a dull pain in her torn soul. She feels completely helpless in the face of the approaching storm. At this moment, Tang Ji was overcome with a burning suspicion. Could this guy really be just a passing acquaintance? But her own heart protests violently against this bitter thought, causing her cheeks to burn with shame. She quickly leaves the building, taking with her a whirlwind of unresolved questions. Quick footsteps echo through the empty corridors as she tries to calm her raging emotions. In a fit of anger and confusion, she is ready to destroy everything around her just to drown out the voice of conscience. A random snippet of someone else's conversation makes her freeze in place in complete bewilderment. Fragments of recent events related to the mysterious kidnapping come to light in her memory. Chu Qing remains icy calm as he watches the growing chaos from the sidelines. Suddenly, the tension reaches its peak, and Tang Ji makes a sudden movement, losing his temper. She is overcome with despair. After the horror she experienced, she can no longer trust anyone in this world. A heavy sigh escapes her lips, revealing the accumulated fatigue and mental pain. A sudden blow shakes the air, knocking the ground out from under your feet. Sports hall, Meng, Shang. Fitness greets them with coolness and empty treadmills. Yi Chen Shui suddenly blushed deeply in embarrassment, caught red-handed. An enraged Tang Ji suddenly jumps up from the table, demanding an immediate explanation. Overwhelmed by a suffocating sense of guilt, Tang Ji takes out all her anger on the punching bag. Each of her blows is filled with a desperate desire to knock all the pain out of herself and prove she is right. Fists cut through the air with frightening speed, leaving only beads of sweat and tears on the skin. Thoughts of one's own powerlessness fuel this frantic, destructive training. Her eyes burn with a green flame of determination, but inside everything is cramped with bitterness and loneliness. Lunge after lunge follows, turning the sports equipment into a silent enemy. At this moment, a local trainer appears in the hall, watching what is happening with a skeptical smile. Without hiding her sarcasm, she makes caustic remarks as she watches the blonde's grueling work. Her impudence knows no bounds because she is confident in her impunity and strength. The coach's words hurt more than any blow, touching the most vulnerable strings of the soul. While Tanji continues to exhaust himself, the overconfident mentor only adds fuel to the fire. She disdainfully asserts her superiority and complete control over the situation. However, the cup of patience is already overflowing, and rage is ready to burst out. A sudden roar breaks the silence as Tang Ji decides to put an end to this circus in the most drastic way possible. The body of a self-confident woman flies through a broken gym window and straight out into the street. Zack is taken aback by such audacity, and onlookers on the street look at what is happening in horror. Following the defeated enemy, an enraged Tang Ji gracefully jumps out of the breach. The frightened and broken rival now begs for mercy, lying right at her feet. Those around her were shocked by such a swift and brutal reprisal against the offender. Tang Ji towers over her defeated opponent, showing that she is not to be trifled with. The defeated opponent looks up in fear, realizing the stupidity of her resistance. Tang Ji looms over her, demanding immediate answers or else more trouble will follow. But a sudden clash interrupts the interrogation when Tang Ji slams his enemy into the ground with a powerful throw. Those around her were shocked by such a swift and brutal reprisal against the offender. Tang Ji towers over her defeated opponent, showing that she is not to be trifled with. Soon, the situation takes a completely unexpected turn, causing Tang Ji to blink in confusion at the praise. Camera flashes and enthusiastic cries from reporters surround the heroine from all sides. Journalists are vying with each other to tell all the details of the incredible arrest of the criminal. A substantial cash reward for helping the city lands on the table right in front of Tang Ji. Later, in the quiet of the cafe, Tang Ji has a leisurely conversation with friends over a drink. She sheepishly reflects on the fact that a person needs very little to be completely happy, true friends, or a tidy sum of money. Her words provoke an immediate and violent reaction from her interlocutors, causing them to literally choke in surprise. One of the friends can barely contain her emotions, shocked by such a frank statement. Tang Ji herself crosses her arms over her chest, trying to maintain a calm expression after what she said. However, the tension in the air only increases when the heroine turns her gaze to her new interlocutor. There is a greedy gleam in the girl's eyes when talking about fabulous sums. Tang Ji raised his finger decisively, voicing a generous bid for the information he needed. Her rival smiles enthusiastically, ready to agree to any conditions for the sake of the coveted jackpot. An energetic jump marks the beginning of a new crazy challenge, full of bright special effects. Tang Ji confidently signs the contract, sealing a deal that will change everything. The endless clauses of the contract begin to seem like an unbearable burden to Tang Ji, causing him to swallow nervously. Meanwhile, a confused Ye Chenshu froze under her gaze, not knowing what to expect. Tang Ji jerks himself back, trying to hide the growing tension. Cold calculation and mistrust flash in her green eyes. Ye Chenshui looks back at her with an equally tense, hidden, anxiety-filled gaze. Unable to bear the pressure, Tang Ji starts shouting, demanding that this farce stop. She looms over her interlocutor, pointing at her with furious indignation. But he quickly pulls himself together, turning around with a mixture of pride and irritation. Chu Qing's dark silhouette silently watches the unfolding drama from the side. Tang Ji glances sharply over his shoulder, feeling the ground shift from under his feet. Ye Chen Shui is lost in dark thoughts, maintaining a dangerous silence. Every drop of sweat on Tang Ji's face reveals her extreme emotional tension. In the pouring rain, Ye Chen Shui desperately clings to her, begging her to change her mind. Tang Ji turns away, leaving her pleas unanswered. The heavy sky above the glass roof oppresses with its leaden hopelessness. Ye Qinshui watched her go with a cold, distant gaze, blurring the line between past and present. On a deserted rooftop, under the sound of rain, Ye Qinshui waits for someone to break the silence. She looks up at the sky, realizing that it all started here and it will end here. Chu Qing's unexpected appearance interrupts her loneliness, making her wary. Yet Chen Shui lowered her gaze in embarrassment, feeling the familiar blush creeping up her face again. The wind blows off the hood, revealing the boy's face in the middle of the empty roof. Chu Qing glanced sideways briefly, maintaining a calm expression. Ye Shui averted his eyes, trying to hide his growing embarrassment. A slight shadow of anxiety flashed across Chu Qing's gaze, but he quickly pulled himself together. Ye Qinshui turns away, crossing her arms over her chest and trying to appear indifferent. Internal tension reaches its peak, bursting out in a comical outburst of rage. Ye Qinshui firmly adjusted his collar, his whole demeanor showing his readiness for confrontation. She squints slyly, allowing herself a slight, victorious smile. Chu Qing barely managed to suppress an awkward grin under the barrage of unspoken reproaches. Chu Qing's calm voice sounds like a prophecy in the hanging silence. The skies open up, pouring cold streams of water onto the roof. Ye Qinshui instantly loses his composure, turning into a menacing fury. Chu Qing reflexively retreated, trying to hide his confusion. As if on impulse, he turns sharply, preparing to leave. Ye Qinshui's voice stops him at the very edge. She looks at the sky with bitterness, feeling absolutely helpless. Thoughts of a long-awaited rematch flare up in her head with renewed vigor. Chu Qing just silently watched a storm of emotions, feeling out of place. Streams of water run down his face as he takes in the scale of the impending disaster. Ye Qinshui bites his lips, trying to stop himself from shaking and cope with the approaching despair. Ye Qinshui stood frozen under the cold drops of the night rain, unable to believe what was happening. A lone figure on the edge of the roof dissolves into the gray shroud of rain and the hopelessness hanging over the city. Through the growing panic, Ye Qinshui desperately searches for any way out of the impasse. Every movement is difficult, and thoughts become confused under the weight of oppressive guilt. A sudden chill runs down your spine as reality around you begins to crack at the seams. The night streets are plunged into darkness, hiding secrets ready to burst out at any moment. Back at the shelter, he tries to calm his thoughts, but the tension only increases. The little companion looks at him carefully, waiting for a decision that could change everything. A heavy sigh escapes my lips as the weight of responsibility weighs down on me more than ever. An unexpected knock breaks the silence, foreshadowing new troubles. A sharp turn, and the sleepy look is instantly replaced by a readiness to defend. A storm of emotions hits suddenly, catching you off guard with its assertiveness. A flash of anger and indignation breaks out, leaving no room for excuses. The door click barely has time to die down before the situation becomes tense. The face is distorted with anger, ready to express all the accumulated bitterness. Tangji sits in the living room, maintaining an outward calm although the situation is clearly heating up. She declares her intention to stay and say everything straight to his face. Noticing what was happening, Tangji turned around sharply, sensing something was wrong. She covers her face with her hand, trying to hide her embarrassment at the unexpected turn of the conversation. A sharp rise from the sofa reveals hidden irritation and a determination to act further. An unexpected obstacle catches Tangji off guard in the dimly lit corridor. Instead of the usual silence, a half-naked figure suddenly appears in front of her. The stranger's sculpted muscles and relaxed appearance instantly knock the wind out of your sails. The shock of the frank spectacle paralyzes the girl, making her forget about everything in the world. My breathing becomes ragged and a bright blush of embarrassment appears on my cheeks. The body gives the most unpredictable and comical reaction to this visual blow. Tangji loses control of himself, succumbing to a spontaneous impulse. The body can't withstand the tension, and drops of blood give her away completely. Every detail of this sudden collision is imprinted on her clouded mind. She frantically tries to gather the remnants of her composure, but in vain. The last line of defense falls under the onslaught of the encroaching panic. A powerful surge of emotion literally knocks Tangji out. A moment of slight confusion gives way to a comical defeat on the battlefield of hearts. Later, an awkward atmosphere hangs like a heavy weight in the room. The guy's crossed arms and averted gaze reveal his defensive stance. Tangji hesitated at the threshold, feeling completely out of place. The owner of the room's gesture points to the destroyed walls, which require immediate explanation. The girl's gaze falls on the traces of the pogrom, causing a new wave of quiet horror. She slowly retreats into the darkness of the corridor, preferring to hide from shame. The door creaks shut, leaving all the questions hanging in the charged air. The fragments of former tension shatter into pieces, revealing the absurdity and severity of the situation. Chu Qing watches silently, not revealing his true thought processes. Tunju suddenly appears in the makeshift window opening, taking everyone by surprise. She confidently strides into the room, invading Chu Qing's personal space with the air of being the mistress of the situation. The situation is heating up to the limit, turning into a tangled psychological knot. Chu Qing maintains a stoic calm, enduring this unexpected visit without a trace of panic. Tangji lowered her gaze, trying to hide the embarrassment that had washed over her with a deep blush. Panic grips her, causing her to freeze in an awkward and vulnerable position. Chu Qing carefully looks at what is happening, analyzing every gesture of the guest. The tension between them becomes almost palpable, causing the air to literally ring. Tangji bursts into a scream, trying to drown out his embarrassment with feigned anger. She turns away abruptly, trying to hide from the piercing gaze of those around her. The rustle of fabric breaks the silence as Chu Qing takes a decisive step forward. Tangji raises his hand in a defensive gesture, as if building an invisible wall. A spark of pride and resentment for her feelings flashes in her green eyes. Chu Qing clenched his fist, holding back the storm of emotions that was about to burst out. Chu Qing's face broke out in cold sweat as he realized how awkward the moment was. Tangji, with a trembling voice, expresses everything that has accumulated over these endless months. Every feature of her face reveals a deep vulnerability hidden behind a mask of skepticism. She adjusts her clothes, returning to her former majestic posture. But Tangji is not going to give up so easily, turning even the film set into a stage for her little game. Her sudden, impulsive jump takes everyone by surprise, causing those around her to freeze in surprise. In the silence of the room, only the sound of soft breathing could be heard as Ye Chenshu was lost in her thoughts. In his mind, he is already far away, carried away by memories of recent events and the strange promises of fate. Ye Chenshui continues to listen intently, catching every detail in this tangled web of intrigue. A moment of silence allows him to finally fall into slumber, casting off the accumulated fatigue. The eyes close by themselves, leaving room only for quiet and peaceful dreams. A professional camera dispassionately records every step, turning reality into a staged show. Every detail of his clothing highlights his confident and impeccable style. An elegant and relaxed look that attracts attention and exudes confidence. Sportswear adds a touch of dynamism, evoking hidden strength. The studio fills with tension as the director demands absolute originality from the participants. Ye Chenshui looked away in embarrassment, trying to hide the blush that suddenly flared up. The formal suit fits perfectly, emphasizing the formal atmosphere. The majestic skyscraper towers over the city, symbolizing corporate ambition and power. Tangji watches from behind, waiting for the perfect moment to make his next move. On her face plays a light, barely noticeable smile of a person who holds all the strings in her hands. But the next moment, Tangji's expression suddenly changed, plunging into cold calculation. Meanwhile, Chu Qing enjoys a relaxing bath, surrounded by the scent of rose petals. Those very compromising documents that could turn the tide of the game end up in his hands. Chu Qing is momentarily distracted by a strange signal cutting through the silence. Every step on the damp floor echoes dully in his closed space. The unperturbed Chu Qing voiced a very peculiar proposal that could take anyone by surprise. However, the details of this dubious undertaking sound much more sinister than might seem at first glance. A slight smile reveals the true intentions of the one who holds all the strings in his hands. A crowd of such diverse and dangerous people gathered around a large round table that the air literally sparkled with tension. Even blindfolded, these people remained deadly vigilant. Quiet whispers and cautious gestures reveal the hidden fears and suspicions of the participants. Ye Chenshui absent-mindedly puffs out smoke, lost in her own dark thoughts. Her tablemate tries to attract her attention with a hint that cannot be interpreted unambiguously. But Ye Chenshui simply cuts off any attempts to engage her in empty conversations with a cold gaze. At this moment, Tang Ji and Chu Qing appeared at the door, bringing even more chaos to the situation. Ye Chenshui casts a long glance at them, full of unspoken irritation. The tension at the table is growing with every second, threatening to spill over into open confrontation. Tangju turned to Chu Qing with a sincere smile, as if not noticing the impending threat. Someone present can barely contain their embarrassment, trying to hide the emotions that have surged through them. Others try to maintain a stony expression on their faces, although the slightest tremor in their voices gives them away. One of the guests allows himself a skeptical smile as he watches the unfolding drama. Chu Cheng maintains a stoic silence, arms folded across his chest as he faces the oncoming storm. Tang Ji wields his chopsticks gracefully while making barbs at his eternal opponent. As Chu Cheng and Tang Ji exchange barbs, the tension in the room reaches its peak. The sudden provocation made Yi Chen Sui feel at a loss under that piercing gaze. Every movement of the rivals is filled with hidden threat and challenge. The hot drink is carefully poured into bowls, adding fuel to the fire of the flaring conflict. The scene at the table is heating up to the limit, as no one is going to give in. A spark of mistrust and jealousy flashes in Tang Ji's green eyes. The slightest mistake could cost one of them their reputation. Unable to bear it, Tang Ji suddenly goes on the offensive, but Ye Chen Shui only smiled slightly in response to her attacks. Her gaze reflects absolute superiority and confidence in her own victory. Tang Ji's face contorted with barely contained rage. They get so close that it seems as if the air between them is sparkling. Tang Ji shamelessly crosses all boundaries, causing a storm of emotions in her rival. Ye Chen Shui continues to calmly enjoy the moment, as if nothing is happening. Every new moment of this confrontation threatens to escalate into an open storm. At this moment, Ye Chen Shui is considering every step, weighing all the risks. A shadow of suspicion falls on everyone present in this room. It's as if an invisible wall of distrustful glances grows around them. Darkness thickens over the participants of this dangerous game. One can only guess who will be the first to break down and upset the fragile balance. Darkness thickens over the participants of this dangerous game. One can only guess who will be the first to break down and upset the fragile balance. The skillful pressure on the edge of a foul leaves the intruders feeling like they're on pins and needles. Chu Cheng continues to maintain an icy calm, gracefully controlling every movement at the table. Meanwhile, Tang Ju tries to drown out his rising irritation with a cool drink. One wrong step, and the chopsticks in Chu Cheng's hands instantly turn into deadly weapons. Tang Ju's dissatisfaction reaches its limit, resulting in deliberately bold gestures. But at this moment, attention is drawn to a mysterious character whose true motives are hidden behind a wrinkled mask. The small, furry animal suddenly finds itself in the center of everyone's attention, attracting frightened and wary glances. Tang Ji crosses his arms over his chest, gritting his teeth in frustration at what is happening. Someone carefully holds a strange creature in the palm of their hand, as if demonstrating a trump card. Tang Ju's green eyes narrowed in cold analysis, noticing every detail. The tension between Tang Ji and Chu Cheng reaches a boiling point, causing the air to sparkle. Tang Ju's sharp gaze pierces through the enemy, leaving no room for maneuver. Suddenly, the tiny animal lets out a furious squeak, revealing tiny, sharp teeth. Ye Chen Sui froze tensely, feeling the situation getting out of control. Dexterous hand movements create incredible commotion as the nimble little animals begin to scurry around the festive table. Every moment is filled with chaos. Tiny creatures whirl past the plates, causing general confusion. Chu Cheng makes a sharp gesture with his fingers, demonstrating superiority and readiness to repel any threat. The confident gesture only emphasizes Chu Cheng's absolute superiority over the situation. Tang Ji bursts into the room, demanding immediate attention and asserting his rights to what is happening. Her sudden appearance takes the guests at the table by surprise, causing them to turn to look at the uninvited guest. But Tang Ji is not going to stand on ceremony, and from the very beginning, unleashes a torrent of indignation on those gathered. Her face is distorted with despair and resentment, and sincere tears well up in her eyes. Those sitting at the table merely watch this emotional storm with skepticism, without showing an ounce of sympathy. Some people even prefer to distract themselves, demonstrating complete indifference to other people's dramas. But the next second, the atmosphere changes dramatically when Ye Chen Sui steps in, calmly flicking her lighter. She takes a drag on her cigarette with a slight smirk, turning the tense moment into a personal farce. Meanwhile, Tang Ji is already racing at full speed along the night road, rushing towards new troubles. She sits behind the driver, lost in her own thoughts, as the landscape flashes by in the headlights. A sudden, abrupt maneuver causes Tang Ji to close her eyes as fate challenges her once again. The speedometer is off the charts, and the adrenaline is pumping in this dangerous pursuit race. A sudden jump from the darkness breaks the silence of the night, turning the journey into a battlefield. Tang Ji reacts to the threat with lightning speed, sending the attacker into a brutal knockout right into the snow. She towers over her fallen enemy, coldly ordering him to rise. The defeated enemy only clutches his head, finally realizing the hopelessness of his situation. Chu Cheng watches from the sidelines, maintaining Olympian calm and assessing the situation. In an instant, Chu Cheng's face was covered in snow. Chu Qing paused for a second, wiping the icy mass from his face with a mixed feeling of annoyance and confusion. Tang Ji smiled victoriously, gracefully waving his hand, demonstrating complete superiority in this playful fight. Biting his lip until it bleeds, the guy sighs heavily, trying to hold back the tears that are welling up. His face is distorted by a grimace of bitter pain, but he does not allow himself to relax. The cold urban landscape watches this quietly unfolding drama with indifference. Somewhere in the middle of a snowy forest, two people continue on their way, oblivious to the cruelty of the world around them. Yi Chenshui pauses, catching his breath and letting out clouds of steam in the frosty air. She lowers her eyes in embarrassment, feeling a delicate blush rise on her cheeks. A fleeting moment of indecision betrays her fragile and vulnerable nature. However, a sudden burst of anger causes Ye Chenshui to turn sharply towards his companion, demanding answers. He maintains a stoic calm, listening to all complaints with unfailing gentleness. There is a deep sadness in his blue eyes, as if he has already accepted the inevitable. But Ye Chenshui is not going to give in so easily, clenching his fists in impotent anger. Her lips tremble slightly, revealing the true scale of the internal storm she is experiencing. She looks at him point blank, demanding decisive action and sincerity. With a sudden movement, Ye Chenshui pressed herself against his chest, finding her last comfort in this embrace. He hugs her tenderly in return, saying words of farewell full of a heavy fate. Tang Jie, hidden behind the scenes, watches this touching scene with a smile. A bright ray of hope flashes across her face as she reaches out to the future. But at that very moment, a crimson shroud covers the space, announcing the awakening of an ancient evil. An ominous aura overwhelms all life as the monster lays claim to the ruins. Fire devours the remnants of hope, and a commanding voice announces the beginning of chaos. A monstrous shadow looms over the shattered stone slabs, exuding primal horror. Ye Chenshui can barely maintain consciousness under the colossal pressure of someone else's presence. But there is no time for fear. The blade cuts through the air in a desperate attempt to defend itself. Ye Chenshui rushes forward, putting all his remaining strength into this strike. Steel clashes with the impenetrable darkness with a clang, sending up sheaves of sparks. The monster doesn't even blink as the deadly energy shatters against its armor. Chu Qing quickly grabs his weakened ally, taking her out of the affected area. A burst of rage distorts the abyssal creature's sinister features. Every move of the enemy foreshadows an inevitable catastrophe. A powerful blow falls on the defender's positions, turning the earth to ashes. Pain pierced his body, but Ye Chenshui clenched his teeth to hold back a scream. It gets dark before my eyes, and reality slips away into a whirlpool of fire and smoke. Ye Chenshui soars into the air, helplessly succumbing to the crushing momentum. Chu Qing reaches out his hand after his flying ally, trying to seize the fleeting moment. Horror runs cold through Chu Qing's veins as the enemy strikes again. The dark tentacles dug into Ye Chenshui's ankles with an incomprehensible cruelty. The monster triumphs, feeling complete superiority over its defeated enemies. The deadly blade pierces space, leaving no chance for salvation. A scarlet fountain irrigates the ruins as the merciless blow strikes its target. Ye Chenshui stands frozen on the edge of the abyss, the world around him engulfed in a crimson fog. Chu Qing stands tall above the battlefield, holding the lifeless body of a fallen enemy in his hand. With one careless movement, he tosses the remains aside like a broken toy. His gaze is cold and unyielding, and his aura suppresses any will to resist. A pillar of violet flame soars into the sky, heralding the birth of a new destructive force. Chu Qing watches the scene with grim determination, prepared for any outcome. The fire blazes with renewed vigor, consuming what little remains among the ruins. The body of the defeated enemy falls limply to the ground, staining the ashes crimson. Chu Qing picks her up in his arms, feeling the last spark of life fading away. The woman's face is distorted with pain, and her lips are stained with blood, foreshadowing the inevitable end. Tears fill Chu Qing's eyes as he realizes the full bitterness of this loss. She looks at him silently with dull eyes, trying to contain the approaching pain. His trembling fingers gently touch her cheek, as if afraid to dispel this fragile moment. A fire rages all around, erasing the boundaries between reality and ashes. He presses her carefully to his chest, silently cursing his own impotence. Meanwhile, Ye Chenshui finds herself face to face with the harsh reality, her heart fluttering in surprise. She stands at the foot of the massive throne, feeling the weight of authority hanging over her. Ye Chenshui stared at the scene intently, trying to hide his overwhelming excitement. The sudden movement catches her off guard, causing her to blush deeply in embarrassment. Ye Chenshui froze in fear, feeling incredibly vulnerable under that intense gaze. A cold winter wind sweeps over the snow-capped peaks, carrying away the echoes of past battles into thin air. A lone figure walks slowly along a snowy path between frozen bamboo stalks. The traveler's face is crossed by crimson traces of recent wounds, and each exhalation curls into thick steam in the frosty air. The look of dark eyes is full of heavy fatigue and unspoken pain lurking at the very bottom. A sudden realization pierces the mind, causing the eyes to widen in shock and sudden insight. The silhouette dissolves against the backdrop of the endless winter sky, leaving only a ringing emptiness. For a moment, a bitter shadow of regret flashes across his gaze as memories come back to life. Meanwhile, Ye Chen-shui was lost in thought, feeling a strange warmth in the approaching dusk. Tongji looks forward serenely, although a shadow of deep thought flickers in her green eyes. A mysterious companion stands frozen nearby, whose silent image holds many unsolved secrets. The tension builds with every second, forcing you to freeze in anticipation of the inevitable. Tongji stares intently at the flickering monitor screen, trying to discern the hidden meaning. Digital lines run across the display, revealing a frightening truth. A moment of numbness gives way to anxiety, causing cold sweat to break out on the skin. The gaze of the green eyes narrows, turning into the sight of a predator who has caught its prey. Tongju's lips tightened into a furious grimace, and his teeth gnashed painfully from the pent-up rage. A sudden blow from the darkness falls on the head, depriving the opportunity to defend oneself. An angry cry distorts the face of the ill-wisher, spilling out all the accumulated anger. Tongji writhes under the hail of reproaches, unsuccessfully trying to contain the rising panic. A sinister grin lights up the face of the one who holds all the strings in his hands. Tears of helplessness cloud my eyes as reality mercilessly crumbles before my eyes. Tears of despair well up in Tongji's eyes as the mortal threat looms over her. Ye Chen-shui coldly raised his blade, making it clear that this nightmare was far more than just a game. She displays the full sharpness of the blade with frightening calm, plunging the victim into an abyss of panic. The sudden blow makes Tongji freeze in shock, feeling the inevitability of fate. However, the next moment reality is distorted, giving way to a surreal waking nightmare. Ye Chen-shui gently touches her face, blurring the line between cruelty and insane warmth. Everything that happens turns out to be just an illusion created by a sophisticated mind. Tongji comes to his senses, angrily slamming his fist on the school desk. She breathes heavily, trying to comprehend how deeply she has been drawn into someone else's manipulations. At this moment, an uninvited guest appears in the doorway, breaking the ringing silence. Tongji meets her gaze with a challenge, ready for a new round of psychological confrontation. But the interlocutor only smiles mysteriously, plotting something hidden from prying eyes. Tongju narrows his eyes warily, sensing a catch in every word she says. Loud footsteps signal that the situation is heating up to the limit. Tongji turns around sharply, glancing at the source of the irritation. The tension in the air could be cut with a knife, and her patience is bursting at the seams. She gives one last angry look and resolutely heads for the exit. Throwing open the door, Tongji freezes on the threshold, amazed by the picture that unfolds before her. A sinister grin lights up the face of the one who holds all the strings in his hands. Tears of helplessness cloud my eyes as reality mercilessly crumbles before my eyes. Tensions on set reach a fever pitch when Tongji catches Ye Chen-shui doing something unexpected. She, sitting down next to him, tries to hide her confusion under a mask of coldness. Tongji narrows his eyes, catching the hidden meaning in this moment. Ye Chen-shui averted his gaze, as if protecting someone else's secrets from other people's questions. But Tongji is not going to back down and sharply hurls accusations at the uninvited guests. Bewilderment gives way to a flash of irritation on Tongji's face. Ye Chen-shui answers her with a heavy, piercing look from under his brows. Emotions are running high, threatening to erupt into open conflict. Tongji continues to press, demanding an answer here and now. At this moment, Chu Qing entered the game, maintaining an icy calm. He demonstratively brushes off the claims, emphasizing his indifference to intrigue. A sudden, sharp gesture stops Chu Qing from leaving. Tongji clings to him with a death grip, demanding an explanation. A slight smile touches Chu Qing's lips, adding a touch of spice to the situation. Tongji is seething with indignation, feeling vulnerable. Hands intertwine in a fierce confrontation, deciding the outcome without words. Tongju's inner rage reaches a critical point, distorting his facial features. A sinister grin lights up the face of the one who holds all the strings in his hands. Tears of helplessness cloud my eyes as reality mercilessly crumbles before my eyes. Good. Tongji seizes the initiative without further ado, squeezing her opponent's hand with unwavering determination. A storm of suppressed emotions can be seen on her face, and genuine rage flashes in her eyes. Every move Tongji makes is imbued with the cold confidence of a man ready to go all the way. Yi Chenshui's gaze was no less dark, and there was a dangerous tension lurking within it. The atmosphere between them is heating up to the limit, threatening to escalate into an open conflict at any second. Yi Chenshui cast a look full of disdain, teasing contemptuously in response to the insolence. A sudden surge of power causes Tongji to release an ominous aura that overwhelms everything around him. A powerful blow breaks through the solid barrier, leaving deep cracks in the stonework. The majestic landscape rises silently above them, as if indifferent to human passions. The tension reaches its peak. Tongji freezes in front of Yi Chenshui, holding her in place. Tongji thoughtfully puts her finger to her lips, trying to discern her rival's hidden motives. Yi Chenshui gives her a stern, piercing gaze that radiates a hidden threat. Chu Jing appears next to him, maintaining a stoic silence and assessing the situation with a cold gaze. Chu Jing is plunged into dark thoughts, trying to comprehend the full depth of the impending crisis. Yi Chenshui is lost in memories, left alone with her secret feelings. Tongji rushes along the road at full speed, cutting through the air and striving to get ahead of time. The image of Yi Chenshui appeared in her mind again, urging her to move forward. Tongji rushes to warn his allies, feeling that this matter concerns each of them. Tongju's eyes showed shock as he suddenly realized a terrible secret. Tears of helplessness cloud my eyes as reality mercilessly crumbles before my eyes. Tongji's eyes showed shock as he suddenly realized a terrible secret. Tears of helplessness cloud my eyes as reality mercilessly crumbles before my eyes. Thoughts whirled feverishly through his head, pushing Tongji towards an inevitable decision. She must, at all costs, get to the truth and figure everything out. The phone in her hand serves as a guide to this world hidden from prying eyes. The smartphone screen broadcasts footage of hidden cameras, revealing other people's secrets. On the street, two figures move slowly forward, unaware of being followed. Yi Chenshui's icy tone sounds like an unspoken warning, full of hidden threat. Clenching his fists, Tongji vowed to himself not to let this go unpunished. The building's evening facade hides much more behind its walls than appears at first glance. Inside the elite establishment, the usual life of the golden youth is in full swing. The relaxed atmosphere of luxury contrasts with the growing internal tension. The bright image attracts everyone's attention, overshadowing other visitors. A sudden guess pierces the consciousness with a cold spark. The gesture is sharp and final, like drawing a line under past doubts. Cold calculation gives way to a flash of pure rage. A surge of emotion breaks the silence of the semi-darkness. The tension reaches its breaking point when Tongji finally steps through the door. The clash of views sparks with hidden hostility and mutual reproaches. A sudden movement interrupts any attempts to justify oneself. The tension in the spacious room could be cut with a knife as Tongji came face to face with the brazen occupant of this place. Her voice breaks into a scream, full of long-standing resentment and indignation, demanding immediate answers. But in response to her storm of emotions, only a lazy, condescending chuckle is heard. Tongju's rage reaches its peak, causing her to blurt out the accusation right in her opponent's face. Memories take us back to those days when passions ran high behind the monitors and team spirit seemed unbreakable. A lazy gesture interrupts the flow of memories, returning everyone to the harsh reality of the nightclub. Every word Tongji says sounds like a challenge, thrown down without fear or hesitation. Her figure radiates determination, a readiness to go to the end in this unspoken confrontation. A clenched fist reveals the emotions raging inside, ready to spill out at any moment. A low, mocking laugh breaks the fragile silence, causing Tongji to freeze in surprise. The hooligan theatrically clutches her stomach, feigning a fit of unbridled joy. Tongju's eyes narrow in anger. This mocking farce is testing her patience to the limit. With a casual movement, she takes out a cigarette case, her whole appearance showing absolute disdain. The lighter's flame illuminates a predatory smile that conceals far more plans than it seems at first glance. Blowing a smoke ring, she continues to play her dangerous game. Gesturing with her cigarette, she seems to conduct this chaos, enjoying every moment of someone else's irritation. A sly squint reveals a predator who clearly has a couple of aces up her sleeve. The clash of views sparks with hidden hostility and mutual reproaches. A sudden movement interrupts any attempts to justify oneself. The phone screen flashes, revealing incriminating evidence that could change the course of this game in an instant. A sudden movement interrupts any attempts to justify oneself. The phone screen flashes, revealing incriminating evidence that could change the course of this game in an instant. Tangji takes a furious step forward, breaking into a scream filled with hidden threat. Ye Chen-shui only narrowed his eyes coldly, responding to the outburst of anger with icy and completely unperturbed disdain. Their gazes collide dangerously close, where the intensity of passion threatens to escalate into an open clash. Unable to bear the tension, Ye Chen-shui casually waves her hand, showing how she doesn't care about other people's hysterics. But the next moment, Tang Ji leaps into the air with lightning speed, delivering a crushing blow straight to the target. The companions immediately rush to restrain the enraged girl, forcibly restraining her impulses. However, Tang Ji continues to curse, seething with indignation and a thirst for retribution. Her rage reaches its limit, causing the air around her to literally spark with anger. She takes a step back, demonstratively turning her back and showing complete disdain. One of those present immediately rushes to smooth things over, calling on everyone to remain calm. He smiles softly, trying to lighten the mood with talk of inner harmony. Meanwhile, Ye Chen-shui lights a lighter, completely ignoring the surrounding chaos. She slowly lights a cigarette, lost in her own thoughts and cold calculation. The guy standing next to me continues to smile radiantly, feigning absolute friendliness. Ye Chen-shui returns to his phone screen, methodically typing out another message. She brings the device to her ear, continuing her secretive and dangerous game. On her lips plays a sinister, predatory smile of a person who holds all the strings in his hands. The atmosphere is heating up to the limit, foreshadowing an imminent and inevitable storm. Chu Qing maintains a calm expression, as if he is not the least bit bothered by what is happening around him. Meanwhile, the kitchen is bustling with activity, and the chef is excitedly discussing upcoming orders. The freshest delicacy takes center stage and immediately attracts everyone's attention. Chu Qing personally presents the luxurious crab, demonstrating impeccable top-level service. The culinary master joyfully welcomes the serving, approving the choice of dish. But Chu Qing instantly changed tactics, turning a blind eye to any objections from the outside. Tang Ji immediately intervenes in the conversation, taking a dominant position and demanding an explanation. She skillfully manipulates the situation, whispering her cunning conditions in the guy's ear. He pretends to give in to her pressure, although he clearly does not share her enthusiasm. An unexpected and sharp blow to the back takes the guy by surprise, forcing him to almost spit out his soul. Tangji shamelessly misuses other people's time, ordering them to get rid of unwanted treats. She points to the exit with a beaming smile, leaving no room for compromise. Chu Qing just silently looked away, plunging into dark thoughts. A sharp movement of the hand interrupts any attempts at resistance. Tangju's face is hidden in the shadows, expressing a chilling threat. A moment later, her features soften, revealing a radiant and false smile. The guy maintains an inscrutable expression, mentally calculating every step. They diverge in different directions, symbolizing the emergence of a serious conflict. A quiet step in an empty corridor sounds like a harbinger of impending disaster. Tangji freezes in place, realizing that the situation has gotten out of her control. Ye Chen-shui casts a questioning glance at the boy, feeling the atmosphere around him begin to tense up. Tangji immediately intervenes in the conversation, trying to draw all the attention to himself and dictate his terms. Ye Chen-shui coldly parries her opponent's attack, refusing to accept someone else's rules of the game. A yawning crowd of onlookers instantly gathers around them, eager for spectacle and new gossip. Chu Qing just closed his eyes tiredly, mentally wondering why he had to deal with all of this. Ye Chen-shui pressed his hand to his chest, trying to hide his growing irritation at this circus performance. Tangji bursts into tears, losing the last of his composure in impotent rage. Ye Chen-shui and the others watch this outburst of emotions with a mixture of shock and disdain. Tangji turns away, throwing out caustic words about the inconvenience caused as he goes. But then she suddenly turns around again, claiming her rights to the one who is dear to her. Ye Chen-shui meets this challenge head-on, refusing to back down even a single step. An invisible spark of fierce confrontation flares up between the two girls. Chu Qing sighed heavily, trying to stay away from the approaching storm. Tangji takes a step back, trying to lower her defense under the oppressive presence of her opponent. Ye Chen-shui puts his hand forward, harshly stopping any attempts to get closer. Tangji looks at this gesture with genuine indignation, not believing what is happening. Ye Chen-shui was deep in thought, clutching his own tie in his fist. She suddenly closes the distance, grabbing Tangji by the collar with a chilling determination in her eyes. Tang Ji freezes in surprise, a fleeting fright visible in her green eyes. Ye Shui blushed deeply with embarrassment, but continued to hold his grip, unable to hide the storm inside. Tang Ji emphasizes that as long as the rules are fair, she intends to fight on equal terms. However, her sudden attack leaves her opponent taken aback by the bold statement. Tang Ji raises his hands in triumph, not hiding his triumph over his small victory. But then he realizes the stupidity of the situation and covers his face with his hand in frustration. The lonely roof of a high-rise building is lost in the gray haze of a winter day, shrouded in silence. Ye Shui sits on the spread-out mat in front of the Go board, deep in thought. Her fingers glide gracefully over the board, barely touching the smooth white stone. In the darkness of her eloquent eyes, one can read hidden resentment and bitter fatigue. She hugs her knees to her chest, completely shutting out the outside world. The tense fold of the form emphasizes its internal bitterness. A cold and determined light flashes in her gaze, ready for battle. The door to the roof is wide open, letting in the icy wind of the void. Ye Shui hesitates, weighing the strengths of her opponents. The white chip falls neatly onto her palm, like a symbol of a difficult choice. She stands at the edge of the roof, peering into the endless row of gray boxes of houses. A bitter realization echoed in her mind. Lin Mo had indeed forced her to play by his rules in this piercing wind. She clutches her burning cheeks in horror, feeling the blush of shame flood her entire face. In her imagination, she's already carrying out insidious plans, shading the entire world with her frightening shadow. A sudden gust of wind blew the door open, and Ye Shui rushed onto the roof like a whirlwind. Tang Ji freezes in surprise, a fleeting fright visible in her green eyes. Ye Shui barely held back the wave of shame that washed over him, hiding his face with his hand. She bites her finger nervously, plunging into a whirlpool of feverish thoughts. A cunning plan is born in Ye Shui's head, capable of dotting all the I's. Suddenly, she claps her hands decisively, casting aside any doubts. Ye Shui confidently takes out his phone to make that call. The right contact is already on the screen, and your heart starts beating faster. The long beeps on the line seem to last forever, adding to the tension. Ye Shui's confused voice sounds hesitant as she tries to start a conversation. But instead of the expected answer, a merciless refusal comes through the receiver, shattering all her hopes. The world around Ye Shui literally collapses, turning to dust from humiliation. In a fit of rage and despair, she throws the smartphone to the ground with all her might. Her thoughts return to the image of Chu Qing, awakening new, strange emotions. Ye Shui hurriedly headed for the exit, trying to hide the feelings raging inside. She walks quickly down the corridor, not noticing anything around her. A sudden encounter interrupts her journey. Tang Ji suddenly appears in front of her. Tang Ji assesses her flustered expression with a hint of mockery. She sarcastically remarks that if Ye Shui continues like this, he will definitely miss his chance. Ye Shui asks doubtfully if her friend is sure of her words. Tang Ji just waves his hand, continuing to stick to his guns. Go, cost sounds, and all the bats, and ever restable within consider. Ye Shui is clearly puzzled by what is happening, trying to find some meaning in this chaos. Her search leads her to a noisy sports ground, where familiar school life is in full swing. Peering through the fence, she searches for a familiar silhouette, but for some reason the right person is not among the players. There is a hint of disappointment and nascent suspicion in her gaze. However, another figure, confidently in control of the ball, attracts attention. Tang Ji handles the sports equipment with ease, demonstrating complete concentration. Ye Shui just sighed, deciding that there was clearly nothing to be gained here. At this moment, the silence is broken by voices. Students from a sports club walk past, dragging bulky equipment. Tang Ji casts an appraising glance at them, noticing every little detail. Without wasting any time, Ye Shui decided to directly address the main instigator. Tang Ji continues to show off, casually spinning the ball on the tip of his finger. Hearing the question, she lazily turns around, showing her independence with her whole appearance. Having thrown out a short call, she switches all attention to the uninvited guest. Ye Shui freezes, feeling growing irritated by this silent treatment. The next moment, the whistle of a flying projectile cuts through the air. Reflexes are instantaneous. Ye Shui confidently catches the ball on the fly, without blinking an eye. In her hand, the heavy ball seems weightless, and her face is frozen in an expression of complete superiority. Tang Ji slows down slightly, stretching his shoulder after the unexpected maneuver. The situation is getting heated, but Ye Shui just brushes it off, continuing to stick to his guns. Tang Ji freezes, watching the ball fly miraculously into the hoop. Ye Chen Shui maintains an icy calm, although her gaze betrays the emotions boiling within. Tongji suddenly pulled himself together, replacing his shock with a defiant grin. With her arms crossed over her chest, she prepares to take on the psychological pressure. Ye Chen Shui looked away, as if not wanting to waste time on her opponent's empty attacks. A cold sense of his own exceptionalism echoed in Ye Chen Sui's thoughts. The atmosphere around her literally heats up with hidden aggression and determination. Tongju doesn't let up, continuing to tease her rival with caustic questions. They stand opposite each other like two generals before a decisive battle. Tongju's eyes gleam with predatory passion and confidence in his own victory. She issues an ultimatum from which neither side intends to retreat. The surrounding students watch the events in amazement, already placing bets on the outcome. Tongji ironically looks at her rival's formal suit, noticing every detail. Yet Qinshu proudly straightened his tie, accepting the challenge without a shadow of a doubt. Her confident hand lands on the ball, adding extra weight to the moment. She issues a bold challenge, making it clear that her opponent is underestimating the scale of what is happening. At this moment, Tongju's henchmen drag a heavy table onto the platform, adding to the absurdity of the situation. An uncertain step reveals a hidden trap, set not without malicious intent. A close-up reveals the full danger of the hidden threat, a sharp thorn ready to ruin someone's game. Ye Chen Shui gives him a short but piercing glance, making it clear that the show is just beginning. Tongji suggests a fair and equal game, urging Ye Chen Shui to avoid performing supernatural tricks in front of onlookers. However, Ye Chen Shui only sighed coldly, dismissing what was happening as childish babble. Having agreed to the conditions, she internally prepares herself for an easy victory. The game begins with a rapid impact of the ball on the court surface. Tongji sets a frantic pace and confidently takes the initiative. Her movements are refined, and her gaze is ablaze with excitement and anticipation of triumph. With a sharp maneuver, she tries to get around her frozen opponent. The air whistles with the cutting wind as Tongji unleashes all his speed. The spectators in the stands are amazed and speechless, amazed by the grace and lightning-fast reactions of the athlete. It seems that Tongji is in complete control of the situation and victory is already in her pocket. But the next second, something goes wrong. A clumsy maneuver results in an unexpected collision with the inventory. Tongji blinked in confusion as she realized the ball had disappeared from under her nose. Ye Chen Shui twirled the trophy on his fingertip with a lazy grin. From the height of her superiority, she makes a caustic remark about her opponent's abilities. Tongji clenched his fists in frustration, boiling with anger. The ball is back in play, and the tension on the court reaches its breaking point. There is a feverish gleam in Tongji's eyes, and a thirst for immediate revenge. She rushes forward with redoubled fury, intending to sweep away all obstacles in her path. Ye Chen Shui gives him a short but piercing glance, making it clear that the show is just beginning. The stands explode with an enthusiastic roar, supporting every step on the court. The ball obediently falls into the hands, charging its owner with confidence and victory. There is a dull thud, and Tongji rises into the air, preparing to hit the ring. But at that moment, a dark shadow of a rival appears out of nowhere. An incredible interception takes everyone by surprise, turning the game around in a second. Tongji freezes in shock, not believing her own eyes. An instant role reversal, her opponent is already at the ring, and Tongji is desperately trying to close the distance. The rival's gaze is cold and focused. There is not a drop of the previous uncertainty in her. An enraged Tongji takes a tough stance, preparing to get the ball back at any cost. The rhythmic sound of the ball hitting the surface sounds like a countdown to the inevitable collision. Thoughts raced through Tongji's head. Could physical characteristics really have changed so quickly? She urgently needs a plan because her rival no longer seems weak. She grits her teeth and applies hard pressure, trying to turn the situation around. A powerful block forces Tongji to retreat under the onslaught of superior force. A flash of rage pushes her to make a risky breakthrough on the flank. The opponent barely has time to react to the unexpected maneuver. A swift dash to the hoop cuts off any escape routes. Tongji shouts out words of challenge, putting all his strength into the final throw. She rushes forward with redoubled fury, intending to sweep away all obstacles in her path. Ye Chen Shui gives him a short but piercing glance, making it clear that the show is just beginning. The ball whistles through the air, heading straight towards its target. At this moment, Tongji makes an incredible leap, soaring above the platform. The spectators in the stands freeze in surprise, watching what is happening with a shudder. Ye Chen Shui looks at his defeated opponent with a cold and distant expression. Tongji breathes heavily, trying to cope with the surging rage and pain. But even when she finds herself on her knees, she is not going to admit defeat. Yi Chenshu watches her opponent's attempts to take revenge with icy calm. Resentment and a thirst for revenge distort Tang Ji's features, forcing her to act on the edge of a foul. Like an enraged fury, she rushes into the attack, putting all her anger into each blow. The heavy ball flies upward again, obeying the athlete's mad impulse. Ye Qinshui notices the hidden threat and instantly changes tactics. She closes the distance with lightning speed, chasing her opponent on her heels. At the most crucial moment, the ball ricochets off the hoop, leaving hopes of victory melting away before our eyes. Tang Ji reveals her true intentions on the fly, trapping her opponent. Rage clouds her eyes, making her forget about everything in the world. An unexpected obstacle in the form of a sharp thorn threatens to ruin all plans at the most inopportune moment. In pursuit of their goal, they rush forward at incredible speed, not noticing anything around them. Their steps echo sharply and synchronously across the surface of the court, creating a deafening roar. Tang Ji picks up the ball confidently, feeling completely in control of the situation. A powerful throw sends the projectile skyward, where Ye Qinshui is already preparing to deliver the finishing blow. Tang Ji puts all his accumulated rage and crushing energy into the strike. The supersonic pulse knocks the opponent off her feet with a deafening roar. Ye Qinshui falls helplessly onto the asphalt, losing control of the situation. An eerie silence, full of shock and awe, hangs over the site. The net falls next, symbolizing the final defeat. Tang Ji triumphantly declares his absolute victory. Ye Qinshui rises to his knees, trying to comprehend the scale of his defeat. The excitement and concern of the comrades contrast with the gloomy mood of what is happening. Ye Qinshui tries to brush off the annoying attention by hiding her true feelings. An unexpected surge of emotion takes everyone by surprise at the most inopportune moment. Classmates insistently demand immediate medical intervention. Yi Qinshui ends up in a hospital bed, deeply affected by this blow to her pride. The attendants enthusiastically share the latest gossip as they go. Rumors spread throughout the school faster than forest fire, acquiring new details. Chu Qing was lost in his thoughts, not sharing the general excitement at all. Rumors of a love triangle reached Chu Qing himself, causing him only skepticism. Chu Qing coldly cuts off any attempts to draw him into these intrigues. Chu Qing's comrades press on his conscience, reminding him of the seriousness of the consequences. An awkward pause hangs in the air as their eloquent sighs fill the air. But Chu Qing remains adamant, preferring to ignore other people's drama games. An awkward pause hangs in the air as their eloquent sighs fill the air. But Chu Qing remains adamant, preferring to ignore other people's drama games. He closes his eyes in concentration, trying to collect his thoughts after a series of strange events. A cup of hot drink lands next to him with a knock, bringing the guy back to reality. Chu Qing turns around, scanning the space with a cold, assessing gaze. At this moment, a local doctor, looking puzzled, attracts his attention. They exchange short remarks right in the middle of the hospital corridor. Chu Qing silently walked towards one of the chambers, hiding behind a half-open door. He stops at the threshold, internally preparing himself to ensure that everything will be under control. The guy frowns slightly as he says the words that are meant to reassure those around him of his stability. Ye Qinshui turns around at the sound of footsteps, her gaze filled with sudden confusion. She looks away shyly, feeling uncomfortable under the close attention. Chu Qing swallowed the lump in his throat, trying to remain calm. Yi Qinshui bites his lip in embarrassment, immersed in a whirlpool of his own conflicting feelings. Chu Qing can't resist making fun of her, hinting at her being too shy. The girl frowns, reminding him of the harsh reality in his own past. Chu Qing thoughtfully placed his hand on his chin, weighing every word she said. Ye Qinshui turns his back, silently revealing the traces of the ordeal he had endured. But the very next moment, a sly, almost playful grin touches her lips. She suddenly changed the topic to a joking tone, causing Chu Qing to blush in surprise. But the very next moment, a sly, almost playful grin touches her lips. She suddenly changed the topic to a joking tone, causing Chu Qing to blush in surprise. However, Chu Qing himself quickly regains his professional composure, preparing for the delicate procedure. Ye Qinshui froze under his gaze, feeling a wave of embarrassment rise up her cheeks. With a precise, almost surgical movement, he removes the foreign body directly from the wound. Ye Qinshui lets out a soft sigh as he tries to endure the sudden pain. A sharp shard falls onto a metal tray with a quiet ringing sound. Chu Qing carefully displays the trophy, confirming the impeccability of his work. But the atmosphere in the room becomes tense, forcing both to avoid direct eye contact. Outside the window, the last rays of sunset slowly fade, plunging the ward into soft twilight. One by one, new fragments removed from her body appear on the tray. Chuqing concentratedly finished the bandaging, confirming that the danger had passed. But Ye Chenshui still cannot cope with the storm of emotions and blazing blush. It flares up even more than before when the awkwardness of the moment reaches its peak. Chuqing only maintains his composure, although the situation is clearly getting out of control. Ye Chenshui flinches back in panic, trying to protect his personal space. The confident Chuqing just a moment ago now looked a little confused. She presses her hand to her chest, trying to calm her wildly beating heart. Ye Chenshui blinked her eyelashes in confusion, trying to comprehend the absurdity of the situation. She timidly tries to object, but the words get stuck in her throat from the overwhelming shame. Ye Chenshui's wide eyes instantly filled with panic. She passionately demands that this crazy farce be stopped, clinging to the couch. Chuqing retorted coldly, maintaining an absolutely unperturbed calm. Ye Chenshui's anger flares, proving that she didn't mean it that way at all. But his patience is clearly running out. The patience meter is rapidly falling. The girl's imagination conjures up the most absurd and childish nightmares about treatment. A confused Ye Chenshui looks at the scene reproachfully, trying to regain control. But her confused excuses sound unconvincing even to herself. Chuqing gives a short instruction, ordering him to turn away without further ado. The girl looks at him with distrust, but submits to the oppressive authority. The schoolyard outside the window is plunging into twilight to the quiet sound of the evening bell. Ye Chenshui overcomes his shame and insists on fulfilling the demand. Chuqing instantly rushed to the window, pulling the curtains tightly. He sternly reminds us of the end of classes and curious eyes on the street. Turning his back to her, he prepares to begin his work. Ye Chenshui obediently lays down on the pillow, closing his eyes from the tension. Their gaze is met with a shocking picture. Her back is strewn with dangerous fragments. Chuqing calmly puts on white gloves, transforming into a cold-blooded surgeon. The girl freezes in anticipation of pain, trusting in his professional hands. The elegant instrument touches the skin, carefully removing foreign fragments one by one. Ye Chenshui narrowed her eyes in embarrassment, unable to hide the deep blush on her cheeks. There is confusion in her eyes. It is difficult to get used to the fact that someone has such amazing abilities. Every glance she gives is filled with a mixture of awe and unexpected trust in her savior. Chuqing maintains impeccable composure, embodying absolute professionalism. The tweezers confidently grasp the tiny fragment, completing the fine work. The doctor's experienced hands act methodically and gently, without allowing a single mistake. Chuqing lifts the prepared potion, assessing the result of his efforts. Fortunately, Ye Chenshui is a powerful cultivator. Otherwise, ordinary people would have to spend many weeks in a hospital. Outside the window, twilight slowly thickens, painting the sky in the cool tones of the fading day. Chuqing silently appears in the ward, watching the patient rest. Ye Chenshui fell into a deep sleep, gradually recovering her spent strength. Her breathing becomes more even, and her features soften in the silence of the room. Chuqing sighed tiredly, carefully straightening the collar of his formal suit. He gently covers Ye Chenshui with his jacket, carefully protecting her from the evening chill. Leaving the girl to rest, Chuqing silently leaves the hospital room. In the dim light of the hallway, he loosens his bow tie, washing away the tension of the day. Waiting for him at the entrance is Tongji, whose mischievous gaze betrays his far-reaching plans. Their eyes meet in the middle of a night street where every gesture is filled with unspoken tension. Tongji looks at his companion appraisingly, frivolously biting his finger in thought. A sly smile never leaves her lips, promising new intrigues in his complicated case. Tongji watches him go, his eyes narrowing slyly in anticipation of a huge scandal. Her thoughts are already weaving a web of insidious plans that could turn everything upside down. Meanwhile, Chuqing receives news that could destroy the usual way of life in an instant. But the treacherous smile never leaves Tongji's face for a second. Chuqing himself is plunged into dark thoughts, feeling the weight of the threat hanging over him. He takes one last look at his companion left behind and silently dissolves into the evening darkness. She enjoys the triumph, anticipating the sweet taste of the coming victory. Tongju's detached silhouette dissolves into the lights of the night city. Chuqing walks forward, immersed in heavy thoughts, as if cut off from the rest of the world. Every step is difficult for him, and only dark scenarios for how events will develop swarm in his head. He is determined to go all the way, despite the complexity of this confusing test. The surrounding world gradually dissolves, leaving the hero alone with his own worries. Suddenly, Chuqing hears a familiar voice behind him, breaking the silence of the night. Tongji approaches him rapidly, full of determination and unpredictable energy. Chuching turns around at the call, maintaining a feigned calm in the face of the inevitable. His gaze becomes cold and piercing, like a blade ready for battle. And somewhere in the silence of the room, Ye Chen Shui is confusedly trying to hide from the embarrassment that has overcome her. He passed, Olg, here often. Ye Chen Shui clutches his jacket in his hands, as if trying to hold on to the fading warmth. She is overcome with a sweet, trembling embarrassment, from which her cheeks flare up with a bright blush. Tongji watches this scene from the sidelines, biting his finger skeptically and considering his next move. But Ye Chen Sui was already immersed in her own thoughts, full of sweet and naive dreams. A decisive plan is born in her head to please him with his favorite dish. The little Ye Chen Shu inside her raises her fist in victory, ready for great culinary feats. However, a second later, confidence is replaced by a fit of panic and doubt. She presses the jacket to her chest, inhaling its scent and finally losing her head from feelings. The night outside covers the city with a dark blanket, while serious passions boil in the room. The wide bed beckons with its empty coolness, reminding one of unfulfilled fantasies. Ye Chen Shu literally melts on the floor from the Spanish shame that overwhelms her. She buries her face in the pillow, stifling a silent cry of despair and embarrassment. Suddenly, a fighting spirit flares up in her, causing her to jump up sharply in place. The darkness retreats as she confidently unleashes her hidden power. She freezes in front of the demoness with horns, feeling the ground slipping out from under her feet. She just smiles mysteriously, as if she knows something that is inaccessible to others. Hearing the devious proposal to ask him out on a date, Ye Chen Shui almost faints. Her eyes widen from shock, and her face flushes with shame. The demoness is already calmly pressing the phone to her ear, leaving her friend no chance to retreat. Poor Ye Chen Shui stands there in horror, watching her fate unfold. Tanji picks up the phone without further ado, intending to personally resolve the misunderstanding. Ye Chen Shui barely contained her panic as she watched her determined friend take the initiative. Disbelief mixed with awe as the scale of what was happening dawned on Ye Chen Shui. Genuine delight bursts out, making the girl forget about all conventions. The voice of reason, in the form of her neighbors, brings her back to reality, reminding her of the silence of the night. Covering his mouth with his hand in embarrassment, Ye Chen Shui quickly apologized for his sudden outburst. Taking a deep breath, she tries to control the excitement that has overwhelmed her. A heavy aura of tension thickens around until a connection with the subscriber is finally established. Tanji watches her friend's metamorphosis with hidden skepticism. On the other end of the line, Chu Qing calmly listens to the unexpected proposal. A slight shadow of doubt flickers across his face, but professionalism prevails. Meanwhile, Ye Chen Shui is gathering all his willpower into a fist for this conversation. Chu Qing records every detail of the upcoming meeting with unwavering diligence. The confident gesture of his fingers highlights Ye Chen Shui's determination to see things through. The response sounds clear and without a shadow of a doubt. With a sigh of relief, Ye Chen Shui ends this fateful call. Tangji casts an appraising glance at her, mentally preparing the ground for his next steps. A picture of the upcoming reception was quickly forming in Chu Qing's mind. Emotions reach a boiling point, and Chu Qing bursts into tears, not believing what he hears. The connection breaks off mid-sentence, leaving many questions unanswered. The words get stuck in my throat, and all that can be heard on the other end of the line is Chu Qing's frightened, ragged breathing. The guy is overcome by a strange panic. Could an ordinary friendly dinner really cause so much anxiety? Meanwhile, Ye Chen Shui is barely able to cope with a storm of emotions, trying to hide her embarrassment in front of the mysterious guest. She steals a sideways glance, but immediately looks away, not knowing where to hide from the overwhelming shame. Her interlocutor only smiles slyly, adding fuel to the fire and pushing the girl to decisive action. Ye Chen Shui is speechless, waving his hands indignantly and reminding them of the main purpose of their meeting. A deceptive calm reigns outside the walls of the educational institution, but the calm before the storm is already beginning to crack at the seams. Tongji sits serenely on a bench, enjoying a snack and dangling her legs carefreely. The sudden discomfort makes her freeze, causing her to forget about food for a moment. She thoughtfully bites her finger, going over in her head the possible scenarios of the impending disaster. The silence of the park is broken by a sharp phone call, instantly destroying her relaxed state. Tangji frowned in displeasure. This call clearly did not bode well. Dark thoughts swarm in her head, plunging the girl into despondency under the sounds of disappointing forecasts. The receiver comes to life, and the voice on the other end issues an urgent warning about an emergency. The situation is escalating to the limit. Official structures are already aware, but the source of the threat has still not been identified. Tangji's frown deepened as he realized the scale of the impending chaos. A short beep ends the call, leaving her alone with the frightening unknown. She lifts her head sharply, feeling a dull irritation boiling inside her. She turned her head, and suddenly, Ye Chen-shui appeared in front of her, wearing a formal uniform and looking extremely gloomy. Without saying a word, Tang Ji blocks her way with a swift movement of his hand, demanding an immediate explanation. Tang Ju stands shoulder to shoulder with Ye Chen-shui, trying to hide his growing irritation. She reproachfully states that Ye Chen-shu has received a priceless treasure at her disposal, but does not appreciate it at all. Ye Chen-shui only looked away, but a dangerous glimmer of hidden intent flickered in her eyes. Tang Ju tries to laugh it off, throwing up his hands, but the atmosphere between them becomes tense. Ye Chen-shui's face contorted with barely contained rage, and a vein of anger throbbed on his cheek. This behavior takes Tang Ji by surprise, causing him to freeze in an unpleasant premonition. Unable to bear the tension, Tang Ji bursts into a scream, mentally sending her rival to hell. Left alone at the gate, Tang Ji gloomily ponders what she heard, feeling like a complete fool. Her lips press into a thin line. Her pride is hurt, but she is not used to backing down. She turns resolutely to her trusty bike, ready to take off, but a sharp internal impulse makes her brake abruptly and look back. She glances warily over her shoulder, trying to catch whatever it was that caused the sudden alarm. Starting the engine, Tang Ji sets off, cutting through the evening air at breakneck speed. Meanwhile, in the quiet and cozy atmosphere of the restaurant, Ye Chen-shui shares a meal with a companion. The guy, with his eyes closed, concentratedly enjoys the exquisite taste of each dish. And Ye Chen-shui herself sits opposite, beaming with a soft and sincere smile. She diligently serves him, putting the best pieces on him and surrounding him with care. Every note of her movements is imbued with trepidation, and a happy melody plays on her lips. Her companion casts an appraising, slightly puzzled glance at her, trying to understand the motives for such hospitality. Ye Chen-shui, on the other hand, is reveling in the moment, determined to become his ideal in everything. Her companion casts an appraising, slightly puzzled glance at her, trying to understand the motives for such hospitality. Ye Chen-shui, on the other hand, is reveling in the moment, determined to become his ideal in everything. However, amidst this idyll there is also room for the stern professionals of the shadow world. Each of them is a master of his own dangerous craft, hiding his true intentions behind a mask of hospitality. Their frightening smiles do not bode well for random guests. But should we be afraid of these crazy chefs? It's definitely worth it, because their methods sometimes go far beyond the ordinary kitchen. The unexpected attack takes everyone by surprise, upsetting the delicate balance at the table. She effectively intrudes into the proceedings, demanding the attention she deserves. By pointing to the abundance of food, the uninvited guest asserts her rights to what is happening. Ye Chen-shui's expression instantly changed, feeling her carefully crafted plan crumbling before her eyes. A flash of righteous anger threatens to burst out with devastating force. The purple-haired lady turns around in confusion at the touch. The atmosphere is heating up to the limit, threatening to explode from hidden aggression. Horror grips her body as the full depth of the mistake she has made dawns on her. A powerful blow sends the daring guest into a deep knockout. There is no trace left of the former arrogance, replaced by bitter tears of repentance. Tang Ji walked resolutely down the corridor, determined to restore iron discipline. She towers silently over the guilty one, inspiring awe with her mere presence. The proud rebel is completely broken and obediently awaits the inevitable punishment. Tang Ji stands frozen in place, at a loss as to how to react to such an unexpected turn of events. Meanwhile, Ye Chen-shui sits quietly at the table, lost in dark thoughts while someone looms over her menacingly. Mustering up his courage, Tang Ji strode forward resolutely, demanding an answer to Ling Mo's whereabouts from the very beginning. But the atmosphere in the room instantly becomes tense, and even the air begins to sparkle with a hidden threat. The darkness of the nighttime metropolis is cut by the light of headlights as a speeding taxi cuts through the cool night air. The new acquaintance, with a determined and unyielding expression on her face, is clearly determined to see it through to the end. Her gaze is full of cold concentration, and a clear plan of further action is already maturing in her head. She confidently climbs the steps to the closed doors, determined to break inside. Having crossed the threshold, she looked around warily, assessing the situation in the corridor. An unexpected sound makes her jump sharply and turn around in search of the source of the noise. Imagine her surprise when she sees Tang Ji and her companion sitting on their knees with a completely lost look. Even the formidable cultivators were completely demoralized by what was happening, hanging their heads in shame and fear. Chu Qing gracefully waved his hand, demonstrating the superiority of his spiritual power, illuminating everything around him with a dazzling radiance. Ye Chen Shui continues to sit in a daze, staring blankly ahead and not noticing anything around him. A loud bang shakes the walls as the sudden appearance of a new guest breaks the silence that reigns in the hall. Ye Chen Shu's face contorted with anger and hidden resentment, threatening to spill over into a storm of destructive emotions. The frightened chef tries to smooth things over, carefully stating that the guest seems to have gotten lost. He casts a worried glance at the motionless Ye Chen Shui, trying to warn the girl of the danger. The chef desperately tries to signal her with his eyes, begging her to shut up and not get into trouble. But her stern gaze does not bode well for the man who is scared to death. Tang Ji flushes with anger, her green eyes narrowing as she watches the scene unfold. The guy just calmly turns away, as if what is happening around him is not worth a dime. Memories flare up like a bright flame, wild battles where this same youth stood shoulder to shoulder with the demon lord herself. Tang Ji gritted his teeth, barely holding back the storm of emotions that was surging through him. But the next moment, a strange, mysterious artifact materializes between them, emitting a cold blue glow. Tang Ji flinches, turning his astonished gaze to the mysterious thing that materialized literally out of nowhere. Tang Ju's pupils contract in shock and cold sweat runs down her face. Chu Qing smiled wickedly, putting his finger to his lips and calling for silence. Even when he's completely exhausted and covered in soot, he still retains this mysterious, intriguing confidence. Tang Ji freezes, feeling the ground slipping from under his feet as he realizes the scale of what is happening. Her lips move silently, trying to find the words, but the shock is stronger than any argument. Tall skyscrapers shine with lights in the night, hiding dangerous secrets behind their mirrored walls. Tang Ji resolutely approaches the glass partition, trying to attract someone's attention. Her face contorts with a mixture of annoyance and worry, and the knocking on the glass becomes more insistent. Tang Ju's lips trembled silently in a desperate attempt to reach out to her interlocutor. Both girls freeze in tense silence, separated by an invisible but insurmountable wall. Suddenly, Ye Chen Shui appeared beside them, his face hidden by shadows, but his aura revealed deep excitement. Tang Ji turns around abruptly, noticing an unexpected obstacle right behind him. Ye Chen Shui gently but firmly closed his eyes, uttering the words that finally put an end to this dispute. Tang Ji froze with her mouth open, feeling her carefully laid plan crumble in an instant. Ye Chen Shui gently but firmly closed his eyes, uttering the words that finally put an end to this dispute. Tang Ji froze with her mouth open, feeling her carefully laid plan crumble in an instant. She can't believe what's happening and furiously tries to get through to her interlocutor, putting all her pent-up anger into her voice. Her fingers flicked frantically across the smartphone screen, scrolling through the phone book in search of a way out of the impasse. But in response, all you hear are desperate beeps and empty shouts into the receiver, abruptly cutting off any hope of help. The phone screen mercilessly goes dark, revealing a silent refusal and a deafening isolation. At this moment, Ye Chen Shui froze, looking at the display with a growing sense of foreboding. A dark aura of anger covers her completely, causing the surrounding air to literally sparkle with tension. The night outside the windows of the mansion remains ominously silent, hiding the coming storm behind its shadows. Her entire body is tense to the limit, and confusion is replaced by cold, calculating composure. She takes one last assessing look at the situation, realizing that there is no more time to think. Her face distorts with sudden horror as the full depth of the impending catastrophe dawns on her. The world around her seems to shrink into a blood-red shroud, threatening to swallow her whole. A cold night wind whistles down the empty street, where the shadow of anxiety falls directly onto the cold asphalt. She takes off, running away with all her might and panickingly repeating to herself only one frightening thought. Every cell of her being is saturated with panic, and in her head there is only a feverish fear of inevitable retribution. Tears of helplessness cloud my eyes, blurring the line between reality and nightmare. The monstrous grin of her pursuers seems to appear everywhere to her, filling the entire space with a crimson light. She screams the question into the void in despair, desperately trying to understand why this fate has befallen her. With trembling hands, she tries to hold on to the bottle of water, feeling the ground literally disappearing from under her feet. The panic in her eyes reaches its peak, turning the world around her into a surreal nightmare. At this moment, Tang Ji finds herself in the grip of a terrible emotional storm that completely covers her. Yi Chen-shui felt the last vestiges of his composure slip away along with the spilled liquid. An iron grip mercilessly squeezes the throat, depriving the unfortunate woman of the opportunity to even breathe. With each passing moment, the air becomes more and more unattainable, and panic gives way to inevitable horror. Unexpectedly, Ye Chen-shui finds himself face to face with the harsh reality when Chu Qing calmly intervenes. Chu Qing's gaze pierces through, leaving no hope of salvation or leniency.